Fear Not, Episode 19. Hi, I'm Billy Atwell, and I believe that consistently facing your fears is the only way to realize your truest self and to make those confident choices that will help you to obtain your deepest held hopes and dreams. I have faith that this podcast series will show you that you are not alone, that it will strengthen you and give you courage to face your fears, and that it will help you to permanently cross over into a life of living beyond your fears. Join me on this journey as we listen and learn from others as they share their experiences in facing and overcoming their own fears. Hello, everybody. Today, you and I are going to be joined by Dr. Benjamin Young. Welcome, Dr. Young. Are you ready to fear not today?
Yes, I am.
Dr. Young is the Senior Vice President and Chief Medical Officer of the International Association of Providers of AIDS Care, one of the world's largest organizations of HIV healthcare providers, where among his responsibilities, he coordinates educational programs for healthcare providers in Africa and Latin America. He is the adjunct professor at the Joseph Corbell School of International Studies at the University of Denver, and he also provides care for people living with HIV at Apex Family Medicine in Denver. Dr. Young is the author of more than 80 journal articles, reviews, and book chapters relating to HIV and its treatment. As a member of the World Health Organization's HIV Clinical Guidelines Development Group, he helped proffer new recommendations for universal access to antiretroviral therapy for all people living with HIV. He is also the principal investigator with the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's HIV Outpatient Study, which is a massive, decades-long analysis of the health of people living with HIV in the U.S. From 2009 to 2011, he was head of medical affairs for Health Connections International, a Dutch non-governmental organization working to strengthen HIV, tuberculosis, and harm reduction health systems in the Central Asian nations of Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. Dr. Young, could you take a few moments and just fill in the gaps?
Well, thanks again for the opportunity to speak with you and talk about Fear Not. I think you covered things pretty well, and I've had a very varied career working principally in the area of HIV and AIDS care, but I've spent a fair amount of time working in basic research, studying the mechanisms of evolution of enzymes, ultimately. Trying to do the best we can to end a plague. But in the same time, I really value and cherish the opportunity to live in a beautiful part of the world, close to my family, our dogs, and of course the lovely mountains of the Central Rockies.
Well, thank you for that glimpse. Can you share with us one of your biggest fears that you've had to face and tell us what you did to overcome it?
Well, it's a challenging question when you ask it, and again, the context is relevant. And at the risk of sounding a bit grandiose, the biggest fear is that people that I am responsible for in the context of people living with HIV, people living with an AIDS diagnosis, is that people die unnecessarily, and that's a really heady thing. But in fact, it actually is something that is a daily and frequent reminder of the importance of the work that I'm privileged to do. What do you do to overcome that? Is the idea that someone dies unnecessarily is a pretty ominous thing, but it's also recognizing that no one person can solve all of the world's problems, and moreover that, and it's to paraphrase many more distinguished people, but particularly Nkosi Johnson, who was a young African boy who ultimately succumbs to AIDS, who paraphrased the situation in Africa, which was basically to do the best that you can with the tools that you have in the place that you are for the time that you have. And so it doesn't demand perfection on all fronts. It means that you do what you can, and I think that's a pretty important and simple way of framing both the challenges in this context, but also a way of living life, I think.
And do you have a daily practice or habit that you use to stay out of fear?
Well, I can't say it's daily, but it's certainly a reminder that we should balance the ability to do the best we can in any particular area with trying to do the best we can in as many aspects of our lives as possible. So for me, it's understanding that work is important, But the ability for me to do that work and to do that work without fear is also balanced by the appreciation of spending time with my family in and to spend a few moments to watch the sunset and so on, to do the best that you can in multiple areas, but not but again framed to where the goal isn't perfection, is just to do the best that you can.
Yeah, perfection is a very deadly trap.
Indeed, indeed. In fact, actually, a good allegory is to not let perfection get in the way of doing a really good job. And I think ultimately that's another way of framing what Nkosi said so many years ago.
And do you have a resource that you've come across that you could share with us that might help us in our own journeys of overcoming our own fears?
Well, I think it's it's a bit of it's a little bit of um, a slight, I mean, perhaps a tangent, but it is related, and that is to some people say smell the roses. I think of it as enjoy the things that you have access to, and to continue to learn, both in terms of that strive towards perfection, but also to learn about things that might not always be in your wheelhouse. And so I like to read things that come, that are random. I like to listen to podcasts that in a sense provide brain candy, things that I may not know anything about, might not know anything about the importance, but will spend 10 or 15 minutes a day just listening to something, or reading something that's different. I like TED Talks in that genre. And so it's keeping your eyes open, your ears open, your brain open to the idea that there's things to learn out there, perhaps to improve that perfection, but in the same breath to marvel at the wonder that we have, which is both life and culture.
Are you ready for the speed round, Dr. Young?
Yeah, let me see if I can do that.
What individual, fiction or real, has made the most impact on your life?
Well, I mean, perhaps to circle back to this little kid in Kosi Johnson, again, it's the idea that you can get lessons from the most unexpected places, and who would expect that if anything, an overeducated doctor could learn from an 8-year-old kid from South Africa. Again, I quoted him from the idea of being an advocate, and not letting one's age or education or place to limit the opportunity to speak and to advocate. So I would count him among those, but there are many people who have worked, that I've been lucky to work with, who have been very inspiring in the face of a lot of adversity, and again, I marvel at these wonderful people.
If you could instantly change one thing in the world, what would it be?
Well, instantly is a tough is a you know is an is fast. But and again, this circles back to my maybe the good fortune I have to do the things that I do, and with a sense of mission and passion, and that is to say, what I want to do instantly is end epidemic death from AIDS, and I think we can do that.
What's your biggest weakness?
Oh, my biggest weakness is probably not being or being distracted. Again, I tend to like lots of things, and that's both I think a positive thing, but the downside is that staying on task, and not getting distracted into other things, which are also very interesting and valuable, can be problematic.
What's your biggest strength?
I think my biggest strength is passion. I believe very strongly in the things I do, and I think through that has come the ability to accomplish things that might sometimes seem big, or big ideas, but we've been able to actually move things along in the context of saving lives and advocating for health equality.
And I know this will be difficult for you, but if you could only have one book to read, what would that be?
Hmm. Boy, that is hard. I have read the Mandela's biography several times, and I think that one has been very inspiring. But yeah, I would hate to have just one book, because I like reading lots of books.
And what's your idea of a vacation?
That's an easy one for me. I'm a really lucky guy in the sense that I get to telecommute to work, which means I get to live where I want to play, and then commute to work. And so that's right here in the mountains of central Colorado.
And do you have a favorite sound?
Yeah, and it follows that. The favorite sound is the sound that is absent of human uh, interventions, if you will. So that's the sound of nature, and right now that means the sounds of some birds and the light wind rustling through the leaves of the aspens in our on our property here.
Do you have any parting advice for us today?
Yeah, and that it's but maybe it's a two-part advice. One is to find your passions. It's sort of easily said, and people talk about that a lot, but understand what one is motivated by, um, and to do something to work towards those goals and aspirations. But related to that, and again, I think this is a theme that has come out through this conversation, which is never stop learning. Be a lifelong learner. Try to learn something most days, and it need not be something related to what you do or your work, but to continue to learn and therefore to find the things that might be interesting, to keep one's mind open to new ideas and perhaps even to contrary ideas.
Thank you. And I want to thank you so much, Dr. Young, for joining us today and sharing your time and your experience.
Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining me today. And remember, you cannot achieve everything, but you do have the God-given ability to achieve anything. So stay focused, out of fear, and keep on keeping on. Until next time, be well and peaceful. For more information on today's episode and guest, or for resources that will assist you in overcoming your fears, visit livingbeyondyourfears.com. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, where 3 times a week we move to a life beyond our fears.